Hey everybody, welcome back to the latest edition of Terrace Talk. A good point for Norwich City last night at Carrow Road. It extends that home unbeaten record. It's pushing almost a year now, but of course that's going to be tested again on Saturday when Hull City visit Carrow Road. With that, delighted to be joined by Nathaniel from the Hull and Back podcast. Nathaniel, first and foremost, how are you this evening? Of course, much appreciated coming on the show.
Well, thank you. And I'm doing pretty well, much better after the last 3 games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're on a good run of form. Norwich on a good run of form. Feels like it's going to be a really good game on Saturday. Looking forward to it. But before we sort of talk about this season and maybe your hopes and expectations, last campaign, 7th place finish. You finished 3 points behind Norwich, who of course just sneaked into the playoffs. Off the back of that, Rosenior's obviously been departed with by the owner. What was your sort of reflections on that decision and maybe that into the season? It feels like probably a little bit disappointment given the sort of hype, I suppose, around some of the players you brought in January.
Yeah. Well, I think if you offered us last summer that we were going to finish 7th, I think we'd be pretty happy with that. I think the squad we had for the first half of the season up until January overachieved. And then the squad we had since January definitely underachieved. I think we only won 3 of the last 13 games. I think from the outside, maybe that sacking would have been more understandable. Personally, I think it was a wrong decision, and certainly up until we've won the last 3 games in a row, it just kept looking like a worse and worse decision as the summer went on, because it took quite a long time for us to sign players, and we lost lots of good players. Maybe that wouldn't have happened if we still had Rosenior, but I think we might discuss some of the refereeing decisions that went against us last year against Norwich, but it's all in the past now. We've won the last few games. I don't really want to look back at it too much, but I think with players like Zaroury and Carvalho, Ryan Giles, who we've still got, I think it was quite disappointing to miss out on the playoffs, especially we had a great win away at Southampton in around February or March. From there, I thought we could really do it. And then that was when we won 3-13, which is average form. Rosenior's gone on to better things. He's the manager of Strasbourg now. They just beat, I think, Marseille. They're doing well. We're doing well. So I guess we can all move on, which is nice.
Yeah, of course, doing well now under the reign of Tim Bolter. A difficult start for him, and I sort of maybe saw a little bit of reaction on social media, fans not completely buying into him and what he's providing. But of course, you mentioned at the start, recent forms turning, and I sort of saw a little bit on last night, and feels like that sort of connection with the fans is starting to build. Got a good track record in Germany. So what have you sort of made of his start at Hull City?
Well, the pressure was always going to be on him more so than any other manager, because the previous manager had, unlike most managers when they leave the club, had actually done quite well. So he's got to improve on Rosenior rather than just sort of, turn things around. There was always going to be a lot of pressure because, as I said, it took us a long time to sign players. We tried to get Kiefer Moore, and he went to Sheffield United. We tried to get Brandon Thomas Asante, and he went to West Brom. We were promised quite an exciting striker on deadline day, and we didn't sign any, which is why we signed free agent João Pedro instead. And I think most fans said that August was almost a write-off. We wouldn't expect to get many wins, and then 5 games in, we have no wins, and the criticism was just far too much, and it didn't take very long. It's only taken 6 games to get a win, and after 8, we're joint with Norwich, and thinking, maybe not playoffs, but we're not going to get relegated. Some fans are like, if it carries on like this, Volta will be sacked. He should be sacked if we lose to Stoke, or should be sacked if we don't beat Cardiff after beating Stoke. And it's just all extreme. I think everything was worse because we had a bad end to the last year. No one was happy over the Euros, and it took a long time to sign players. We had a very bad pre-season. We lost almost all our games, and the goalkeeping was horrendous. We didn't really understand why we were, Volta, what Voltable was, and we didn't see the benefit of it. And I didn't want him to be sacked after 5 games. I think he's done relatively well so far, but it was always going to take a little bit of time for it to click, to use that term, which everyone's kept saying. We just have to wait for it to click, and hopefully it has.
Yeah, have you seen any sort of changes in terms of a playing style from Messina to Volta? Has it been sort of a clear change of identity that you see on the pitch now?
Yeah, Rossignol is a bit more of a conservative manager in that we'll have a lot of possession, and we've had possession under Volta, but most of the possession we had under Rossignol was with the goalkeeper, the two centre backs, and Micah Seri, as a sort of sweeper. But we don't have a sweeper CDM who drops deep and passes the ball around our own box for the entire game. We basically completely bypass the midfield and go direct to the wingers and to the striker. So we're much more direct. We don't really seem to want to defend at all. It's just we'll try and outscore you. And especially at home under Rossignol, that really didn't happen. I didn't go to every game last year, but I only saw us score more than one goal in the games I did go to once all season. That was August. So we were not an ambitious attacking team. And I think, to be fair, now after the last few games where the scoreline could have been anything like 3-3 to 5-5 to 10-0, I understand now that our owner, Adrian Elagella, said, I didn't sack Rossignol because we finished 7th. I sacked him because it wasn't the exciting football I wanted. And actually now, thinking back to some of those games where we were struggling to score against teams right at the bottom of the league, I still don't agree that we sacked Rossignol, but I understand from the owner's perspective, if the style of play is the most important thing to him, I now see why he's made that decision.
Yeah, it does feel very similar to Norwich and the departure of David Wagner. Fans weren't buying into the playing style, but of course the position in the league maybe looks good, but maybe the fans are not happy. You mentioned sort of that start to the season, 3 straight wins, lots of goals being scored. I think it was the first time you actually took the lead in a game last night all campaign. Yet you obviously got some positive results in other games. So it feels like you've got that comeback ability. Yeah, what have you made of kind of the recent upturn of form? Feels like it's quite positive.
Well, I think as they often are, especially away from home when you're struggling, a penalty decision can be really, really pivotal, because not only can you get a goal out of it, but you can almost get a goal out of nothing and just a bit of confidence. So the first half against Stoke, we were dreadful. We could have been about 2 or 3 down. And I think the main thing we'll say is that if we play a good team, we'll probably lose. If we play a bad team, we can outscore them. We'll see if that's the case against Norwich, because I think Norwich are pretty decent. But if Stoke could finish their chances, if Cardiff could finish their chances, and certainly QPR, who had about, I think, 17 shots in the first half or the first 30 minutes, our goalkeeper had to make a lot of saves. But that penalty decision we got in the second half at Stoke, from then on, we've played quite well. If we hadn't got that penalty, Volta could have been sacked by now, to be honest. Maybe if we hadn't beaten Stoke and then bottom of the league Cardiff, but I think every new manager coming into the Championship needs a little bit of luck like that, because it's so difficult. And I think he's got that, and then they've built upon it. I think if you beat Stoke, that's one off. If you beat Cardiff, the bottom of the league, you'd expect them to do that. But 3 wins in a row, clearly, we're going in the right direction, and we can see now that we could have a relatively positive season.
Yeah, you mentioned that relatively positive season. Where's the bar? Where's the expectation for the campaign? Is it trying to push into the playoffs? Are you expecting a little bit of transitional time maybe for Volta and maybe next season, your season? Where do you sort of see the campaign going?
Well, we could get into an hours long debate about financial fair play and that sort of thing. I've got to mention it. Stansfield, 20 million in League One is crazy. But I think if you're not, if you don't, it's not a fluke, but what Ipswich did was absolutely incredible. I guess they had the momentum from the League One season, but most teams are only going to get promoted if they've got parachute payments. We have a fair bit of money, but we probably need to do it, go for it every 2 years, perhaps. So we've got a good young squad. I think we've only got one player who's above 30. We've got some great players like Balumi and Zambrano who could have really bright futures. And maybe we won't quite be there this year. I expect us to finish the season better than we started, because they can grow into the league together. We've got 3 or 4 or 5 players who haven't started a game yet or haven't made their debuts. So I think I'd be happy with top half. And even if we finish lower than 7th, I don't think we should sack Volta, because I think we need to grow into it and maybe really go for it next year when some of these players have had a year in the Championship and improve slightly. But at the moment, I'd be relatively happy with not a boring, because the way we play is quite exciting, but just a transitional year, 12th or 13th. That'd be fine for me.
Yeah, you mentioned a few of the new additions there that you brought in the summer. I mean, some of them abroad that are unheard of, some from the Championship, the likes of Palmer and Miller that was at Preston, and sort of well-known players. Also quite a busy window out, of course, the likes of Philogene and Greaves, which are both quite big departures. Obviously, the loan departures of Delap, who's now doing well at a club we don't mention on this channel. And Carvalho, of course, going to Brentford. So what did you make of that window? I suppose the signings, the big departures, where was your head at when that closed?
Well, I think it's probably slightly better than last summer, but maybe not quite as good as January. I expected Philogene to go because he was just too good for us, and I expected Greaves to go because he was great, and he'd been here quite a long time. And then, of course, I didn't really expect Delap or Morton or Carvalho to come back on loan, and we didn't want Zaruri. So that's all fine. I think the main one that I wasn't happy with was Tufan leaving. I think we've got some good attacking midfield players, but they're not a goal threat. Really, they're more. Well, I don't know what Marvin Merlin really does at the moment. He signed from Darmstadt, I believe. I expected a whole lot more German players to be signed, but I think, we lost a lot of players, so we had to bring in a lot more. We've got in 17. I keep thinking, it's good that our new players are scoring, but then I think if our new players weren't scoring, then no one would be, because they're all new. I think we probably missed out on a proper striker. I think Bedier, he's got 2 goals and 2 now, but he's only really scored a lot of goals in Switzerland. I mean, João Pedro is 32. He's had a few fitness issues recently, and it's a free agent. You always think, why are they a free agent at that point in the year if they're that good? So we'll probably sign another striker in January. We've got a lot of wingers now. We seem to have a lot of good options, and I think the main focus was, because we lost out on those players on loan, we've signed more players on a permanent deal, which is why I think we'll be stronger next year. Whereas if we'd signed lots of better players on loan, if you go up, it works. Equally, if you go up, you might not actually be able to afford them, because I don't know whether we could have spent 100 million on Delap and Morton and Carvalho and players like that.
Yeah, one player you did bring in that I'm going to ask you about, a man that left Carrow Road feeling he wasn't getting enough football, and obviously new management at Norwich, and he wanted a fresh start, goes to Hull, struggled a little bit to get in the side from sort of what I've seen, didn't even come off the bench last night, Abu Kamara. What have you made as a sort of short cameos, and won a penalty on Saturday?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one, because we signed 2 wingers on deadline day. We signed Mohamed Baloumi from Ferenc in Portugal, and we signed Kamara. And I think maybe just because he's from another Championship club, it was a higher sort of profile signing, but we spent maybe £4 or £5 million on him, including add-ons. And he just won the league in Portsmouth. So you'd think out of the 2, with Mohamed Baloumi, who we didn't hear of, I didn't even know he existed before deadline day, you'd think out of the 2, Kamara would be the one who would play more. But even though Baloumi gave the ball away on his debut and we conceded a goal, he was the player who's played more. We probably didn't spend as much money on him. So I think Kamara will get some game time eventually, but Baloumi's been a real sort of bright light the last few games. Liam Miller on the other sides, I think he beats his man every time he gets the ball, which is great. And it's a shame we didn't have him on the other wing with Philogene last year. So yeah, the Kamara one's interesting, because you think he would have come here and have guaranteed game time, because that's why he left Norwich, but it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, intrigued to see what reaction he gets on Saturday from the home crowd. Before we talk about that game, just intrigued to get your thoughts on Norwich. Have you seen anything other than under new management? Of course, you would have seen them last season under David Wagner. Lots of controversy in both the games, decisions that were made. I think that went probably more in Norwich's favour than Hull. So what have you made of Norwich so far from what you've seen, via the TV or any other platform?
Well, I think Norwich have a lot of good attacking players. They've lost Rowe, but Borja Science's form seems to have replaced that. And I think Sargent, he's a very good player. Seemingly kept on the sort of home form that was so strong last year. I've not seen anything other than the image of the ball being across the line for Norwich. I think it was probably worse for us because we had a few decisions directly against Norwich last year, but over the course of the year, it probably does even out. So you can't really be too bitter about it. I think, they'll be there or thereabouts. Maybe one of the last years they can push on without, lots more signings. I imagine players like Sargent or Science could leave this year because I think Norwich is the third year since being relegated. So I don't know whether it's this or bust, but yeah, I think Norwich is still going to be a top 10 team easily. So it'll be a very good game on Saturday.
Yeah, I think a bit of transition maybe this season, hoping for the best, but of course, willing maybe next season to be the one. Just a sort of a settled lineup that you can expect from Hull on Saturday. Have you got any injuries that are key players out at all?
Well, the main thing you'd think is that you wouldn't change a winning lineup. We just scored 4 against Cardiff and we made 3 changes. So I think the back 4 will definitely be Pandur, Drame, who's a right back but playing left back, McLaughlin, Alfie Jones, Captain Louis Coyle. But then beyond that, I imagine Zambrano will come in because he was rested against QPR. So I think that back 5, I could be 90% sure on that. The front 5, or front 6, it could be anything. I imagine Liam Miller will play and Bellumi. Probably Regan Slater, but it could be Merlem or Amur or Palmer in the other midfield spot because he likes to rotate those number 10s. And I don't think he rates Mason Burstow very much, the striker we signed from Chelsea. So it'll be Chris Badia up front.
Yeah, who's maybe the key man, the star man to look out for on Saturday from a whole perspective? Last year we'd have probably gone for the Philogines or the Delaps. We'll see a little bit more of an unknown team now. So where's maybe the key or star or key man?
Well, I'm really impressed by Liam Miller. Last season we had Jason Lakilo on one wing and Philogene on the other. Lakilo might be... See, I don't know whether this is insulting, but he wasn't the worst winger I've seen play for Hull, but he was most absent in that he wasn't bad at what he did. He just didn't do anything. Whereas Liam Miller, every time he gets the ball, you think he's going to score or make an assist or just beat his man at the very least. So I think he's probably our Philogene replacement. I think right-footed on the left wing. Attacking-wise, he's been our best player so far.
Yeah, with that, before we round off, intrigued to get your thoughts on the game and a score prediction. Norwich have won the last 3 games between the sides. 2 of those, of course, last campaign, which ended up, as we've sort of mentioned, being quite decisive in terms of the league. But how are you feeling heading to Carrow Road on Saturday?
Well, we like to score goals and we don't like to defend. We play a very high line and we could be punished against good teams. But I think maybe it'll be similar to Sheffield United and Leeds. We'll concede some goals, but I think we might score some. I had predicted before the QPR game that would be 2-2 and we lose 2-1 to Norwich. I might bump my prediction up to a 2-2 on Saturday. I think it could be anything, but something like that. Yeah, I'm happy to go Desmond.
Yeah, I can see a high goal scoring affair. Feels like 2 sides that are both sort of in good vein of form, scoring goals, lots of attacking play. So, yeah, going to be an exciting one. And before we round off, Nathaniel, I just want to plug the podcast there that's underneath your name where Hull Norwich fans can find your guys' content.
Yeah, I'm the host of the To Hull and Back podcast, and we do an episode every Sunday night. And then we're also doing a new series in collaboration with a local radio station, formerly West Hull FM, Humber Wave now, and that's Tigers Talk that we do every Wednesday.
Good stuff. We'll link all that good stuff down below. Nathaniel, do really appreciate your time this evening. Pleasure to speak to you again after a season or two. Looking forward to the game on Saturday. Of course, lots of good content coming your way across our channels. We'll be speaking to Johannes Torup on Friday to get the full team news update. Of course, a few injuries that we're going to have a little bit of concern about from last night. So intrigued to see how that's going to play out. Of course, there'll be tactics board and all the other usual content. Of course, you can go to the app as well for all of the good stuff. With that, we'll see you on Saturday at Carrow Road for what should be a real humdinger between two sides that want to score goals.